You're going to have a conference and you're going to have a museum sort of come in and take over the conference. The Exploratorium is the one you want for my money. We're so glad to have such fantastic participation, both in great applications on the network, and really what Cenic is about. Cenic is the research, operates CalREN, the Research and Education Network. And for my money, what Exploratorium does exemplifies research and education at a very deep level. We've got a two-part presentation here. In the first half, we're going to tell me again.
We're going to talk about data visualization.
Oh, okay. See, it was visualization. That's why I couldn't say it. The first half is about data visualization and the visualization wall that they've built in the new Exploratorium space that you've been there, what, about 2-3 years now? And if you haven't been there, you really need to go. It's a fantastic location. And then the second half, we're going to learn about how the Exploratorium has leveraged the Cenic network with its partners to bring people to an eclipse 5,000 miles away. So we've got a distinguished group here. Nicole Miner is the director of Moving Images, which creates media content at the Exploratorium. They produce videos, live webcasts, artist installations, podcasts, music compositions, and any other content that they can think of. And we also have Ron Hipschman, not to be confused with a Rob, and he's worn many hats, as you can tell. And he's been an exhibit developer.
So many it's gone.
He wrote that, not me. He's written 2 of their 3 cookbooks, which are about building exhibits and maintaining them, as he was explaining. If you build it and it falls apart in 6 months, you didn't build it right, you got to start over. And he's been with he's been at the Morrison Planetarium, and he's worked at places from the South Pole to all over the world, and also taught at San Francisco State. We're happy to hear that. And then we have Ron Rothfarb and Rob Rothfarb. It's hard to say Rob Roth. But I actually know him because we're both on the program committee, but I still can't say his name. But he's the director of online projects at the Exploratorium. So we're really pleased to present them. I can't wait to hear to see more about what they're doing, and turn it over to this distinguished group. Thanks.
So I'm Ron Hipschman, and I was asked to come and talk to you a little bit about some of the visualizations that we're doing in our observatory. I'll show you a slide of that in just a bit. But first I want to say that we're collecting data at the Exploratorium. We're really interested in data. And not only for our own use, but for our public's use, for teachers' use, and students' use as well. And so we have not only have the network and the visualization, but we also have the data collection instruments as well. So for instance, on our roof, we have a fairly large collection of meteorological instrumentation, air quality instrumentation, water quality instrumentation. That's not on our roof, but a lot of instrumentation. This is for instance, our weather station. And by the way, if you haven't been to the new Exploratorium on Pier 15, we're in this amazing location now, as you can see, and we now have this opportunity to be in the environment. So that's kind of important for us to be monitoring the environment and actually talking about the environment, and hopefully collecting some long-term data as well. So it's everything from weather to we have an infrared camera watching the street in front. Again, we have really great city views as well as bay views here. We have instrumentation in our lagoon. We have a buoy that we have borrowed from the Pacific Marine Environmental Labs, and that's monitoring CO2, atmospheric CO2 and dissolved CO2, so we can talk about that. These are normally out in the middle of the ocean, but we have it in very close to the shore, and this is kind of the first time anyone's ever measured that, because these are not usually placed where we placed it. But so we're getting all kinds of interesting data there, and we also have water quality instrumentation in the lagoon as well. These are sondes that have all kinds of very interesting monitoring sensors on them, so we're picking up on about 20 different factors in the water as well. We try to display that local data in our observatory. Right now, the current version, and we're always fixing this, and again, the maintenance thing, we're always fixing it. The current model of our screens, we're showing data from a bunch of different sensors, but you'll notice that we also kind of show it over time. So there's not just one line going across this graph, there's 365 lines going across the graph, so you can see the seasonal changes and things like that. We're trying out different ways to visualize this data. Some other interesting instrumentation we have on the roof, we're part of the boundary layer network, which Earth Networks is sponsoring, and we have one of their radiometers on the roof here, which gives us vertical profiles up to 10 kilometers of temperature and humidity. That normally you would do that with a sonde on a balloon twice a day, but we get it every 10 seconds. So it's actually a really interesting piece of instrumentation, and one that we couldn't afford without working with outside groups. And we're also actually working with the company to help prototype this. We've had a bird problem. The microwave window kept getting punctured by seagulls sitting on it, so we now have a solution for that. So we help the company solve the bird problem too. That gives us actually data that we don't display. This is actually on our big wall in the observatory. We don't display this to the public because this is so complicated you almost have to have a graduate degree in meteorology to understand skew-T diagrams, but we can bring it up if we really want to talk about the vertical profiles through the atmosphere. We also are working with CODAR, and they have a series of radar antennas around the bay, ringing the bay, and they're doing high-resolution surface current data recording, and that gives us kind of a graph that looks like this. Again, this is sort of on our 9-screen wall, but we don't actually bring this up because we're working on better visualizations. We don't think that vector fields are necessarily a very good way to show this data off. So the observatory kind of looks like this. Here we have a presentation being given. We can use our 9-screen video wall. We call it well, NASA calls it a hyperwall, and I guess we're trying to find a better word for it. But the hyperwall, we use it for presentations, but we also have it running during the day with a series of rotating visualizations. And that hyperwall is 9 HD screens. Each screen has a little Mac Mini, and as you can see, the normal networking mess here. But you can see the 9 Mac Minis, each screen has a Mini running it, and that allows us to do these extremely high resolution visualizations. The wall itself is with 9 screens gives you 5,760 pixels by 3,240 pixels. So it's really high resolution. Speaking of surface currents, this is a visualization showing global surface currents. We like to kind of relate local data, the data we're collecting, to the global situation as well. So we try to match some of the data from local and global situations. We not only do things from the Earth, but we also are trying to monitor space weather too. So I've been working with the Solar Dynamics Observatory folk who use a lot of data. And we have, this is not in motion unfortunately, but here you actually get to see the most recent 15 days of solar rotation and all the various storms that are present on the sun. So here we collect frames from the Solar Dynamics Observatory folks and put them together into movies and then display them on the wall, both a visible sun, oh, actually I do have a laser here, don't I? A visible sun and an ultraviolet sun. This was so interesting to me, I decided since the satellite collects 9 different wavelengths of ultraviolet light, I decided we had to do all of them. So this is, again, a lot more data collecting. If we didn't have Cenic, this may not be possible. So here I collect frames from 9 different solar rotations, and we show them all synchronized on the screen. So and each wavelength shows you something different about the sun. Kind of fun. We also use satellite information from NOAA. This is a true color daily picture from NOAA. Now this one actually doesn't take that much to download. It's just one large picture, but it takes NOAA a lot to acquire this data. It's over, I think, 4 terabytes of data in one photo there, but we don't have to download the 4 terabytes, thankfully. But it does mean that it takes a long time to process this picture. So unfortunately, this picture is always 2 days old, so they can't process it in time for me to have it 1 day old. We also kind of zoom in and look at water vapor data, and NOAA delivers that to us as a series of black and white cloud water vapor pictures. And then we take that data, we download all those frames every night, and we composite the Earth underneath it, and label it, put dates on it, and put it together into a movie. And so you can actually, this is only 1 day's worth, but we actually show 7 days worth of water vapor data. So actually you can see current data from NOAA. It's pretty cool. This is what it looks like on the 9 screens. In addition to all that data, we're also talking, I think Mary probably talked about the communications that we've been doing, the video conferencing we've been doing live with ships out at sea. Here, we used our large wall for that as well. This lets us have 4 screens in the upper left there to do the actual video conference, and we can surround the video conference, which we're talking live with the ship, with contextual information. So we can show where the ship is, we can have a couple of videos from the ship, and especially with ships that have sent out several streams of live data like the Nautilus, we can actually show live multiple shots from the ships and from the ROVs thousands of feet below the surface of the ocean. It's really exciting to watch this and listen to it happen all at the same time. Here's another shot from a different ship, the Joydes Resolution, which is a drilling ship, and they were drilling in the Indian Ocean here. And one of our people who does a lot of video for us, Lisa Strong, happened to be on that ship here, and so she was giving us a tour of the ship. And again, we can see the contextual information around the boat. We've also had video conferences with the Okeanos Explorer, which is actually sending out multicast streams, as is the Nautilus. And so here we're doing some tests just a few days ago, receiving live video from the Okeanos Explorer over multicast, which was a real challenge for us at the museum because multicast is a real challenge. Here's another shot of that. Here we can look at the data that they were gathering at real time. It's actually pretty exciting. So here they're doing multi-beam sonar of the bottom. They're just doing some mapping of the bottom of the ocean as they were transiting eastward. So they always map when they're just traveling. We also use the screens video conferencing-wise for events. For instance, just recently, we did a live from Mavericks. Now that's not super long distance because it's just down the coast from us. But we wanted to do Mavericks because Mavericks uses data to determine when to call the contest because they only have 48 hours, and then the people have to come within 48 hours. So what we did was we put up some of the data, and this is all live data. We could put live web data up on our screen here to show exactly what they were using to call the contest. And then we watch it live, just a streaming. Actually, here's there we go. Now, that's Lori Lambertson. She's one of our teachers, and she's a surfer. So it's, everybody gets to do something at the museum that really interests them. So she really wants us to watch Mavericks. And just recently, Nicole's going to talk more about this. We did show we webcasted the Eclipse from Micronesia, and that's going to be in just a moment. One last thing I just wanted to show you that we do on our screens is we worked with Google, the Earth Engine folks. And again, this is a fairly data-intensive application where we are showing Google Earth Engine, but on the 9 screens. So we're not doing one screen like you would do at home with Google Earth Engine, but we can do it 9 screens, which means we're downloading a lot of data because each one of those screens is a movie that shows you the change that's occurred over the last 30 years. And here you can see the change that's occurred in Dubai over the last 30 years. Much better in person. Or you could watch the Amazon being destroyed in the last 30 years. Oops, let me go back to that. There we go. There we go. So now you can see the dark green areas here. Watch them turn light green. And now notice you're looking, by the way, you're looking across the entire continent. So we're looking at a very large scale change here of the Amazon, the forest disappearing. And if you can zoom in on that, because this is all Landsat data, and actually watch it happen. Yeah, kind of impressive, or depressing, really. Right near here, there's actually something that's natural that's actually really interesting. If you look at the upper Amazon here, you'll notice that you can actually watch the meanders of the Amazon change over 30 years. Can you see that happening? It's really cool. Or you can watch, for instance, Mount St. Helens. You can watch all the growth come back in. This turns from gray to green over the last 30 years. We didn't quite have, it starts in 1984, so we didn't actually get to see Mount St. Helens erupt in the data, but we get to see the recovery of the Mount St. Helens area. Now, all that data that's coming in, the water vapor data, the solar data, the true color Earth data, it's all coming into our server room here. We have kind of a server room dedicated to the observatory, and you think, it takes a lot of computing, but actually all of that stuff that you just saw, all that's done on this one Mac Mini. Yeah, there's a lot of power there too, apparently. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole and Rob, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take those after. I'll leave the power there.
That's fine. I can use this one. Okay. This is good. Okay.
You should plug in the remote if you're going to use that
This one
first.
is not.
Audio.
Yeah, we're going to use that one.
So we should plug that in and get it.
Top one's a laser.
Are we gonna use the?
Okay. They'll need to hit forward. Bottom button is forward.
Oh, it just went to sleep. Is that?
My name's Nicole Miner, and I work at the Exploratorium. I direct the department called Moving Images, and we do a lot of different media stuff, as Michael told you. And my colleague Rob Rothfarb, who's from the web team, and we work on a lot of projects together for the museum, creating content, supporting other people's projects. So we thought, because the eclipse just happened, I'm still recovering, so if I get slushy, you'll know it's because I'm still coming back. But we got a big grant from NASA and from NSF, 2 grants actually, to do the eclipses of both 2016 and 2017. And for anyone who doesn't know yet, 2017, there's an eclipse that's going to go across North America. And it goes all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast. And so it's this enormous opportunity. It hasn't happened since 1979. So for a lot of different education groups, this is a huge opportunity. There are all kinds of projects that are already in the works. And we've been covering eclipses for a long time, so we wanted to get back in the game. And so for this eclipse, it was kind of called the Forgotten Eclipse. It was mostly happening over Indonesia and some of the South Pacific, mostly over the ocean, and then a few islands called the Federated States of Micronesia. Most people ask us why we choose where we go when we go to broadcast an eclipse, and for us, it's always looking at the predictions, weather being the most important, obviously. And so for this eclipse, we chose Micronesia as opposed to Indonesia, which is where most people went. So we share our content through a lot of different ways, and we have, we always build a website. We usually do multiple streams. We try to provide content for everybody to use in their own way, whichever way works best for them. So for instance, we have both a program, but we also have just a telescope feed of the beautiful images, so that if you want to use it in your library or institution or classroom, you can do your own interpretation of the eclipse for your audiences. And I did mention we've been doing eclipses since the late 90s, when the internet was still a young pup. Ron did some coverage in Aruba in 1998. I believe the webcast was about this size. It was about the size of a postage stamp. I was around for that one too. And so we did them every chance we could for several years there. And we just wanted to share with you some of those projects from over the years. They're all archived on our website. They're all available. And this is the path of totality that I was mentioning. So you can see that Woleai is where the little Google balloon is there. A lot of people were going to Indonesia, but for us, there were two factors again, the haze of the weather, and also the sun was going to be kind of low on the horizon because it started early in the morning. So we're always looking for the best position. And we found this little island, actually it's an atoll called Woleai. Only 300 people live there. It takes 22 hours of flying and 48 hours by boat with 2 tons of gear, because of course we had to bring everything. We had to bring the satellite dish, all of our video gear, everything, to get out there to do the broadcast. The telescopes, of course. So we thought we'd share with you just a little bit of totality for those of you who didn't catch it. It was a very exciting eclipse, I just wanted to say, because that prominence up there that you see right there coming off the sun, I think, Ron, did Paul say it was like 5 Earths or 7 Earths? Or 7 Earths size. I mean, it's enormous. So we're just going to run a little bit, and Rob's going to read you a quote from one of our other scientists who was in the field.
So Dr. Paul Doherty, our senior staff scientist at the Exploratorium, who was on site and co-hosting the program with Robin Higdon, told me afterwards something that was very striking. He said that the video images shared by the Exploratorium were the highest dynamic range, high-def videos of an eclipse ever shared live with the world. They were the closest to what he had seen with his own eyes and ever seen on a video screen. And that's something that we're always interested in, is how to show something in the most authentic way. You're experiencing a phenomena from across the world that's looking at the heavens in real time, and the experience that we would like to provide is as if you were right there. So he goes on to say that it was great to see the high-resolution images of a large prominence stretching out into the solar corona, and also to watch the edge of the moon occult a sunspot. In addition, they captured live images of the photosphere of the sun using hydrogen alpha filters on 2 telescopes. These showed an active surface of the sun with prominences sprouting from the rim and filaments stretched across the surface. For the 2017 eclipse on August 21st next year, we hope to use even higher dynamic range video cameras. He was telling me the story about how the optic engineer on site was actively rewriting the code of the CCD attached to the telescope hours before the event to optimize it as much as possible. So we want to be able to share images of the highest quality of looking at the sun when possible.
So this is the example of our telescope-only feed. So we send it without audio so that, again, people can do their own interpretation, scientists or educators. But we also have a program, which is an hour-long program with hosts, and we use, demos, and we talk about a lot of different aspects of the sun and eclipses. We usually try to feature a mission or two from NASA or whoever we're working with. So it's kind of a combination of a lot of different things. And so we just wanted to share a little bit of it with you.
I'll wait for the time to ring.
Should we, it's a 4-minute totality. Are we almost there?
I think.
Okay. One of the things I always find interesting is what scientists talk about that they're looking for during the eclipse too. And so there's a lot of interesting things in these images. It's harder to see up here on the projector, but if you look at it online, you can see there's planets in the background that you can see. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. And the other thing I wanted to mention is just the crowd experience. When you watch an eclipse with a bunch of people, you get the ooh, ah, and everybody gets the chills. It's very exciting, and I've done it so many times and it's still exciting. So we wanted to try to make this available to people for them to use however they might want. And the other part of it is that we were in as I said, a very remote location, so we're trying to work with the local community wherever we go. So for instance, we brought I think something like 5,000 pairs of eclipse glasses to the area for both the atoll that we were on and the other islands nearby, so that they could all have them, because otherwise they wouldn't have anything. And so this was a big deal for a lot of the people local to the area. And our educators went early, like a week before our production team, to do classes and work with the local school kids, both younger kids and older kids, to try to help them understand what was happening, learn about eclipses, learn about the sun. So they did classes sort of for a week prior. And that way the kids were all very excited when it was actually Eclipse Day. So it was really exciting. And they helped us a lot in doing the actual production, because it's quite an event. I think we better move on, huh? Are we so close, Ron? Oh, there it is. There's the diamond ring, everybody. The other thing is that lots of other people use our footage for their own things as well. So Rob's going to talk a little bit about how we do it, because as I was saying, it's kind of a complicated endeavor. I'm actually sorry now that I'm at the conference that I didn't bring our hand-drawn tech diagram, which was on a whiteboard in my office, because I think you all would have enjoyed it, but I'll let Rob talk about this one.
So every time we do an eclipse production from a remote location, it's quite involved, and I think the team has the interfacing with the optics of the telescope down really well, and bring along the engineers to do that in the best possible way. We hook up with commercial satellite companies. We're buying time on a satellite just so that we can transmit the signal from the remote location. In this case, we did find a satellite over the Pacific that had visibility to that island. And fortunately, that same satellite was viewable on the west coast of the US. So in Napa, we did a downlink, then it went by fiber optic to LA. In Los Angeles, we did a couple of things to the signal. We added live closed captioning, and there it took a bit of a split. So half of it went to Atlanta, where we worked with a provider to do the live encoding for internet audiences, and also to push it up to a domestic satellite to share with broadcasters and with NASA directly. That was a preferred way for them to get the program. They showed it on NASA TV and on our website and on broadcast channels. From the LA location, we also had it on fiber back to San Francisco for us to display in our program that we created in the museum. While it was there, we also created another version of the program with Spanish narration and encoded that and then sent that through our Cenic connection directly to Akamai for broadcasting on the internet. So it was pretty involved, and a lot of hops in different places. We're always interested to learn what kind of pathways we can leverage for the next one.
And I think an important thing to know is every time we do this, we try some new things to try to push ourselves, but also find out other audiences and see what we can reach. And so doing the live Spanish narration was a new thing for us, but we believed it was very important because we're getting ready again for 2017, where we're going to have a large amount of Spanish-speaking population able to see the eclipse themselves. So we wanted to try it and just see. We partnered one of our scientists, who is a native Spanish speaker, with a local television host from Univision in San Francisco, and they did kind of this very charming, much more conversational narration of the eclipse, which was cool. So we produced 4 streams live, as Rob mentioned. So there was the educational program, the telescope feed without sound. Then we had the telescope feed with a live sonification. That was happening in the field. So one of our staff was taking the telescope signals, putting them into his computer, and using a software that he had composed a piece. The telescope pieces went into that and created a live sonification of the signal, which was very cool. And then the 4th stream being the Spanish language narration. We also created a bunch of other content. We had videos, which I'm going to just share with you a little bit of in a minute. We created about 10 to 12 video produced pieces ahead of time. And again, these were to try to reach people. So from the most basic, what is an eclipse? You know, start there. And then we did a little bit about celestial mechanics. Why are those, you know, bodies moving around? We talked a little bit about the magnetosphere. We did a piece there, and that featured one of the NASA missions that was part of our broadcast. And then other topics like how to view an eclipse safely, how to build a sun viewer yourself, that sort of thing. And then Rob is going to talk about another new thing we had this time, which was the Eclipse app.
That was an exciting thing for us to develop this time, was to explore some additional ways to share the live webcast. So we made an Android app called Total Solar Eclipse, which is available for free in the Google Play Store. And that allowed people to watch the eclipse live from their phone or tablet, and also to participate in a conversation in Twitter about the eclipse and see what people were experiencing in the part of the world where they could see it directly.
Yeah, in real time. It was very exciting. And we hope to develop that app for iOS devices for 2017. So this is a screenshot of the website itself. So this website is actually quite large because we've been doing eclipses for a while. So it contains all of our older content, archived content, as well as new content. So the screenshot that you're seeing, that's the video player front and center. And those are our two hosts explaining celestial mechanics right there. In Woleai on the atoll, they were actually on a abandoned runway from World War II. And that was one of the clearest spots on the island without tree cover, so it worked really well. Of course, it was very hot because it's close to the equator. And then you can see the Twitter feed down here, and then some more information. Up at the top in the nav bar, you can see some of the other parts of the website. One part we did was an area called Our Expedition. This was another thing that was very exciting to the locals. We brought a small drone with a GoPro camera, and we shot some footage of the island so we could try to show people where the crew was. And the locals had never seen a drone, nor had they ever seen footage of their own island. So it was really a cool thing, and it ended up being this wonderful exchange between the local people and our crew, having fun with the drone and shooting video. It was really fun. And we had the Twitter feed in here, as well as it's connected to a blog, which I think is the next slide. So with the blog, we also tried to produce some pieces ahead of time to write about what we were doing. And then while they were in the field, the folks on the team were sending dispatches. How, you might ask, since there was no connectivity out there. We took a little BGAN, which is a small satellite that's kind of a laptop size, and they sent these via email. So the blog was another way to keep up with the story. We were trying to create a narrative with the whole project. You want to talk about that one?
And these are a few screenshots from the mobile app showing the eclipse during while it was happening. It had a navigable interactive map with the path of totality. You can zoom in and look at the island where it was happening or other places along the path. And this is another side, which was trying to tap into the global conversation about people observing it and reacting to it. So we had a Twitter conversation, as Nicole mentioned, on the website in a couple of locations, as well as integrated into the mobile app.
That was exciting too, because when Indonesia would cloud out, people were tweeting about it, and then they might switch over to our feed. There was this interesting interplay going on because, of course, clouds are the big drama of any eclipse, and they didn't disappoint. We had clouds right up until totality, so our team was waiting to see what would happen. Is this why Woleai? Okay, so we're going to show you a quick, short video, one of the produced pieces we made, just so that you could get an idea of some of the educational assets that we create.
On March 8th, 2016, there is going to be a fantastic celestial event, a total solar eclipse. It's going to begin at sunrise in Indonesia and sweep its way east across the Pacific Ocean. The Exploratorium is going to send a production crew to broadcast this event live
eclipse
for all the thousands of people who can't see it for themselves. As a producer, I had to figure out, where should we go? So the first thing I have to do is look at the path of totality. Now the path is only about 100 miles wide on the Earth. The moon is casting a shadow on the Earth. That's what the total solar eclipse is. And when you think about it, the moon is very small and far away. And so the shadow is very narrow. It doesn't cover the whole Earth. As the Earth rotates, the length of the path is thousands of miles. So that's the area I have to choose from. So first I looked at Indonesia. We'll just send the crew there. The problem is the weather. The weather's really important during an eclipse. And in Indonesia, it looks like it's going to be awfully hazy. But as I started to look at the rest of the path, I realized it's almost all over the ocean. For us, with our telescopes, we have to be on land. So I started hunting for islands. I got out the magnifying glass and I found a few atolls there in the path. And I selected Woleai in Micronesia as the perfect spot to send the crew. It's right near what they call the center line of the path of totality. So the closer to the center of that 100-mile area that you get to, the longer totality is. So we're going to have just over 4 minutes of totality. To see a total solar eclipse is an incredible experience. And as you watch this broadcast of the eclipse from Micronesia, I hope you all are steading up, because on August 21st, 2017, there'll be a total solar eclipse where the path of totality goes straight across the continental United States. And I hope you'll all take the extra effort to get yourselves into the path and see it for yourself.
So that video featured Robin, who's our executive producer, and she was also one of the hosts in the program. And again, the idea that we're really trying to get across is that this next year, people will be able to see an eclipse from all over our country, and we really want to encourage people to get out there. Even if you're only in the partial zone, you'll still see it, you know? And so there's lots of exciting things that I think will be happening. So finally, we want to talk a little bit about how we distributed so that you have a sense of how we put it out there. And Rob's going to talk a little bit about all the various ways that we put it out into the world.
So as I mentioned before, we did do satellite distribution to make sure that broadcasters and NASA would pick it up, as well as making it available that way to any museums or other locations that happen to have their own satellite dish. But our primary method of distributing the program was through internet streaming. So the 4 video streams were available via unicast streaming on our website via an embeddable video player that we made available on the website to share it so that people could embed the live stream of the eclipse in their own website or blog. The mobile app, which we mentioned. We also worked to make sure that people could embed the live stream in Facebook and share it there on their timeline. And for the 3rd time since 2006, we did our very fun experiment of streaming into the eclipse into Second Life. And I'll show you a couple images from that virtual event or mixed reality event in just a moment. The experiment that we did also, which was new this time for us, was to originate our own multicast stream, which we put out through CalRen and made available to R&E networks across the U.S. And that was really exciting to see. And currently, if you look on SAP announcements or go to our page at exploratorium.edu /eclipse/multicast, you'll find the pointers to being able to look at the programs through your multicast media viewer. And as I mentioned, NASA also distributed our programs on NASA TV through both broadcast and internet streaming.
And we just wanted to mention that we also try to be responsive to the moment. So when you do a live event like this, you want to try to capture as much of the excitement while it's happening. So we tried to cut pieces as quickly as possible and get them up onto the internet afterwards so that the archives are there while people are still kind of in the zone. Rob, did you want to talk about this part?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we're scrambling to get the production to work. It was very complicated on so many fronts, in addition to preparing the presentation in our museum, which Ron hosted. But we wanted to make sure that we put the word out to educational organizations, other museums, anyone really who had an opportunity to potentially show the live web streaming and create an event around it. So we communicated with different educator organizations. We put the word out with Cenic, through NASA, and through Internet 2. And sometimes the lead time for something like that can take you need enough time for people to prepare and to organize. So we're still learning about how to do that in the best way. And we hope next year to be able to distribute the program more and have more people do things with it.
Yes, and we go old school too. I wrote 100 emails to different museums and science centers and education centers around the country, and these were just some of the ones who contacted me back and said, we'd love to show it. So it was exciting, and I always, when I start that conversation with people, I ask them, please tell me how it went for you guys in your library or in your university, or where, like, did the tech work, first of all? Was it easy enough to use? But then also, how was the program for you? And so we've had some nice emails back from these various places. One of the stories I liked very much was that the Singapore Science Center, which is a place that we have some connections with, we've done work there in the past, they were actually in the path of totality getting a partial eclipse. So what they did for their program was they ran their crowd outside, looked at the partial, then came back inside and watched our broadcast so that they could get a little bit of everything. So it's kind of exciting. And I also like the range of size, from the very smallest library to large universities and large museums.
And so one of the reasons that we're excited to be here this time talking about the eclipse is to make more connections with libraries in California. And so we're working with Cenic to learn more about how to work with libraries. We've met some great folks here. Please come up and talk to us. We're friendly, we won't bite. But we realize the challenges, especially in smaller libraries, about how to integrate the kind of programming that we make available and can share into a library space. These are just a couple of quick images from the event in Second Life, which in some ways mirrored a little bit the event we had in our museum and some of the ones that Nicole was talking about at other institutions. The amazing thing that happens in that virtual world is that you get people from all over, different cultures, different geographic areas, all over coming together to experience something. So we beamed it into 2 different locations, and that was really fun. And then at the experiments that we mentioned already were the creating a program with Spanish narration, the closed captioning, which worked amazingly well. We were very pleased to be able to make our programs more accessible, embedding in Facebook, and then the multicast distribution.
So that's kind of it for us. We just wanted to again say 2017 is coming. There's plenty of time to plan. So please contact us. Come talk to us if you're interested at all. We think right now our plans aren't fully settled yet, but we believe we're going to send 2 crews to the field, probably Eastern Oregon and around Casper, Wyoming. Those are 2 places where the weather predictions are fairly good for this eclipse. So we will have, possibly 2 live totalities, which is very exciting, and then lots of new content and the content that's existing. So we want to help you to use that for what works for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll take any questions or comments you have.
One over there.
Lauren here from Cinegrid. You mentioned that you read a comment from one of the astronomers, I believe, that this was the highest quality, highest dynamic range video of an eclipse, or words to that effect. Can you tell me, because I'm a video geek, what the actual video was that you were sending?
Well, we were sending 720p video from the field. It was about a 2.5 K stream that we streamed on the internet, but I can't speak to the actual details of the dynamic range because I'm just learning about that detail as our production crew arrives back from their trip. So it's something that I could communicate more in a little bit of time, and we could follow up with you about it.
So 720p frame rate was?
Probably 29 or so.
So 720p 30 at 2 kilobits.
Yes.
Yeah, the stream that went up to the satellite was, I think, a 20 megabit stream from the field.
Okay, thank
But
you.
I don't know the details of the dynamic range that was captured. It was custom software written by the telescope engineers. So I'm hoping to learn more
I'll
about that.
follow up with you later. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that it?
Ron, this is a question for you. We've been talking with a lot of library people here who are very interested in content for libraries and maybe some live productions, but maybe also just educational materials. So how exportable is the work that you're doing, for our video wall to other locations?
The wall material, I would say, is sort of exportable because it's such a high resolution. Unless you have similar resolution equipment, it might be difficult to show it. I guess we could produce our stuff also in 1080 and post it. That would something that I've wanted to do, but I haven't done yet. If you can produce it in, I guess it's 6K video that we have. Certainly we could, I'm getting much more expert in FFmpeg now, thank you. And thank you ImageMagick and FFmpeg if there's any of you people who contribute to that project out there. Wonderful open source projects, but they're the sources of, they're the things that let me do it, and I think it'd be easy to post that stuff if we really wanted to. We haven't. John?
One of the things I would suggest is you socialize the folks that are putting up the SAGE displays, the tile walls that UCSD, and actually we're just going to be building one for Merced and Hawaii. There's lots of people around the world that have these multi-panel displays, and all we have to do is create a SAGE 2 plugin that is your app.
I should mention that we're not using Sage.
Doesn't matter. We can
yes.
fix that.
We're using, for our wall, we're using a piece of commercial signage software called Sedna, which is a German produced piece of software, which works really well. It's not, I can't imagine it's not easy to coordinate 9 Mac Minis into playing all their videos at exactly the same rate. So,
but I appreciate the suggestion. That's
Sage
something
is a
that we
good
should
idea.
follow up on.
Yeah, I'd love to collaborate on that with you.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, well.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.